What happens when a woman loses everything to an empire, except her will to fight? Gabriela Silang wasn't born into legend. She carved it, blade first, into the very soil of the Philippines. Her husband was the face of revolution in Ilocos, until a Spanish bullet ended his life. And that's when she rose. Not as a widow, not as a martyr, but as a warrior. She led battles on horseback, rallied farmers into fighters, and turned colonial soldiers into corpses. For a few fierce months, Spain didn't fear men in the north, it feared her. But who really was Gabriela Silang? Was she driven by vengeance, love, faith, or freedom? And why has her story been reduced to footnotes when she stood tall against an empire? This is not just the story of a woman who fought. This is the story of a queen who refused to kneel. Before Gabriela Silang became a revolutionary icon, she was known simply as Maria Josefa Gabriela Carino. Born in 1731 in the town of Santa, Ilocos Sur, she was raised in a time when the Spanish grip over the northern provinces was tight, unjust, and unrelenting. The Ilocanos paid heavy tribute to faraway governors and friars, and even their indigenous identities were being erased in the name of God and empire. Gabriela was of mixed descent, her father a Spaniard, her mother a native Ilocana. Orphaned young, she was raised by priests and married off at a young age to a wealthy merchant. She was educated in Spanish customs and religious doctrine, but she never forgot her roots. After her first husband died, Gabriela remarried in 1757, to a fiery Ilocano leader named Diego Silang. It was this union that would ignite her destiny. Because Diego wasn't content with tribute and submission. He saw cracks in the Spanish Empire, and he wanted revolution. By the mid-1760s, Diego Silang had become a lightning rod in Ilocos. The British had captured Manila in 1762, and Spain's colonial rule was shaken. Sensing an opportunity, Diego called for the expulsion of Spanish friars and corrupt officials in the north. He demanded autonomy for Ilocanos under native leadership. He didn't just talk, he acted. He led a revolt and captured the capital of Vigan. For a time, Diego ruled Ilocos as its own republic, proclaiming himself a local gobernador under British recognition. But the dream was short-lived. In May 1763, Diego Silang was assassinated by his own allies, betrayed by greed and bribes from the Spanish. That should have been the end of the revolution. But Gabriela, widowed and furious, picked up where Diego left off. And unlike her husband, she had nothing left to lose. Gabriela Silang did the unthinkable. In an era where women were expected to mourn, obey, and disappear, she took command of the rebellion. Clad in red and black, mounted on horseback, she rallied what remained of Diego's supporters and gathered new forces from the highlands and lowlands. Men followed her, not out of pity, but because they saw in her a leader with vision and fire. She struck Spanish garrisons in Pitagan, Tayum, and Abra, carving a bloody path of resistance across northern Luzon. Her troops called her La Generala. To the Spanish, she was the Joan of Arc of Ilocos, but she didn't need foreign comparisons. Gabriela was her own storm. She knew every battle might be her last, but death didn't frighten her. She had already buried her past. Now, all that remained was the fight. In September 1763, Gabriela made her boldest move. She launched a direct assault on Vigan, the very city her husband once held. It was both symbolic and strategic. But the Spanish were prepared. They had fortified their positions and laid traps. Gabriela's forces were outnumbered, outgunned, and betrayed once more by informants. The battle was swift. Her forces were crushed. Gabriela was captured while fleeing into the mountains with her closest followers. For days, she was paraded as a prisoner, an example of what happens to those who rise against Spain. On September 20, 1763, in the plaza of Vigan, Gabriela Silang was publicly hanged. She was only 32 years old, but they couldn't kill her name, nor the revolution she inspired. Gabriela Silang's story isn't just history, it's a mirror. A mirror of how women have always fought alongside men. A mirror of how colonizers silenced not just voices, but legacies. And a mirror of what resistance looks like when it comes from grief, from rage, and from love. Today, Gabriela is a symbol of feminist resistance in the Philippines. Her name has been taken up by women's rights groups, scholars, artists, and activists. But too often, her story is reduced to romantic tragedy or nationalist footnote. She wasn't just Diego's widow. She was the commander of a people. She was a rider of war. She was the blade they couldn't break. Gabriela Silang never lived to see the Philippines free. But she died making sure the Spanish knew they were never safe. That even in the farthest reaches of Ilocos, a woman would rise from the ashes of betrayal and turn mourning into rebellion. She reminds us that revolution is not only built by the strong, but by the broken who choose to fight anyway. The warrior queen of the North may have been hanged in 1763. But she never truly fell. Because every time a Filipino woman speaks truth to power, every time someone stands up against injustice, Gabriela rides again.